Saumyajit, both of you, Tara, Neil, and yourself, you've all spoken about this being a $15 to $20 billion market opportunity. So, Saumyajit, I want to understand from you, are you now starting to see more investor interest coming in? Because all of these plans are also going to require funding, especially when we talk about scale. So, is that starting to happen? Are you starting to see investors buy into this story, into this opportunity? And secondly, we talked about demand, and that's very clear from what each one of you has said. But on the supply side, especially when we talk about appropriately trained manpower, etc., how challenging is that going to be to build scale?
Oh, Shereen, we just came out of a pre-Series B round, about 2 months back, and despite what was happening across the world, I think we feel very grateful and very privileged to our investors that we successfully closed it, and in fact we got oversubscribed. We've now gone into a Series B, so I have been interacting with a lot of investors in India and abroad, and I think the interest is very high because the world recognizes the need for solutions in the aged care segment. The world recognizes that this is probably the biggest blind spot, not just for the industry but for also the tech industry. EMOA is extremely tech oriented. The backend is very tech heavy. There is a whole approach towards creating a digital first solution, but also a care first and an elders first solution. So investors get it. Investors understand that this is, even if it is a 2,000 rupees per customer ARPU, we are talking of with just 1 million people on the app, it's a 24,000 crore market. When you add the full continuum of care within the EMOA platform, we now have the Epoch Care Homes, who operate at close to about $1,600 per month. So if you look at the full continuum, investors understand that this is a very large segment, exactly as Tara mentioned, about going to about a $15 billion opportunity. So investors understand it, but I think there is a little bit of a watch and wait that is happening, which is in some ways going to keep all the players in the industry there, that you need to keep your focus, you need to keep your eye on margins, you need to keep your eyes on customer acquisition cost, on how you are scaling it up, and at every incremental zone, how the whole cost of expansion, cost of delivery is becoming better. So I think the global investor base as well as the India investor base has started to show a lot of interest. There are a lot of single HNI investors who are putting in money, which is a great indicator, despite market conditions. I think the demand side is something that is seeing increasingly an opening up. So whether it is different parts of the country where individuals are recognizing that elder care cannot be anymore a point which is ignored. A lot of blind spots in NRIs, for example, have opened up after the COVID period, where they've realized that they can't afford to just have their parents vulnerable in some part of the country. Corporates, insurance people, bank people have understood, who are now partnering with organizations like us, that there is some part of the care play that we can have an active role. To your third point about supply, I think there is innovations that is at play. Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is possibilities for utilizing a lot of talent which is there in the neighborhood. Part of the talent could be the elder itself. We have elders from 55 going up till 75, 80, who are very active, who are talented, who have time. And exactly as Neil was mentioning in what Get Set Up is doing, and brilliant work by Neil, there is possibilities of many of such kind of people being brought into the fold of routine employment for taking care of elders itself. So whether it's young people who are available, but maybe in alternate professions as gig economy, or it is elders, I think there's a full spectrum of supply also available, which can be leveraged. But it requires a lot of innovative deployment, with technology stitching the whole thing together.
Yeah, I would imagine that you need to bring all stakeholders together and really have that ecosystem impact. But Neil, you said you've been in business now for the last 2 years. Take me through what the plans are now as far as expanding this offering is concerned, taking it to more people.
Yeah, so we actually started in the US just 2 years ago, but have scaled to India and several other markets. What we're seeing very interesting, as we all know, is there are Indians living all over the world. We are such a big population. And so we're seeing the diaspora from all over the world actually come onto the platform and wanting to actually connect with their roots and do things with people. So we are starting to now grow from online because our online offering has scaled quite a bit, is to take that to the next level where people want to meet in person. Like my example, like my mom, who's in Goa, met some 50 strangers who she only met online on Get Set Up and flew to a Get Set Up concert with her singing teacher, right? And so we're seeing that desire that they connected online, but they want to do activities together and now go on holidays together with people they met. And so I think what we are doing at Get Set Up in India is actually expanding to actually follow what the customers want, because those were the opportunities they missed. And so we are doing offline events. We are leveraging, I think, underutilized assets. So if you think about coffee shops, you think about gyms that are running empty in the afternoons. Like, how do we take our online fitness classes and offer it in partnership with them in the physical world? Same with financial institutions that are, they've realized that our platform has about 86% are women who have traditionally been out of the financial literacy space. Like usually the husbands take care of all the finances, but we are seeing women on our platform being so inquisitive. So we're having banks and pension funds in India actually approach us to run more financial literacy programs, funding some businesses that are coming from these women. So it's very exciting to see the online community that was built over the last 2 years and really taking it to the offline world to actually help them accomplish some of the goals that they had as they're aging.
Well, the next time you're organizing a concert, let me know, Neil. I would love to be part of that as well. But Tara, I want to come back to you and address the issue that Saumya and Neil both spoke about, building partnerships. And I would imagine that given the opportunity that you speak of, as well as the mindset change that you alluded to at the start of the program, are you now starting to see this become something that corporates, for instance, are thinking of as part of an incentive, as part of how they treat their executives and so on and so forth? Or banks, what's the sort of ecosystem impact that you're seeing as you've seen mindsets change individually as well as at the enterprise level?
No, definitely, Shereen. We're seeing, we're seeing the whole investor space change hugely. And the minute the investor space starts changing, people in general start waking up to a sector. So that's been a great shift that we have also seen. Partnerships, of course, given that aging is so linked to healthcare to begin with, there are healthcare partnerships that are integral to the existence of any senior care offering. So we are seeing our partnerships with healthcare partners deepening both ways, because it's an audience that doesn't need to be hospitalized. And therefore, we're even seeing hospitals partner with us and say, take over some of the care and we'll do the clinical bits, which is something they are very good at. So that's a big partnership model that we're starting to see. To corporates, I would say the conversations are starting. I haven't seen much translate, and it was a pool that we talked a lot to in the early days of Antara in Dehradun, but then we saw that the buying and the consumer behavior was very sort of end-to-end or B2C in that sense. But at some point, at least the care homes and the home care bit, the minute insurance starts linking up more strongly, corporates will have to start looking at this as somewhat retirement benefits. And I think the shift is on the anvil. And lastly, banks, etc. I think given that so much of this $15 to $20 billion pool is in financial services, they are starting to change products around. And we're seeing that both insurance, life insurance, ULIP plans, as well as traditional banking is starting to adjust slowly to understand that this consumer and demography needs special attention. I think we're a few years away from these partnerships actually taking shape, but I do see a lot of potential partnerships within people in the senior care space, like I already mentioned. And I think that will be very exciting for us and to see how the multiplier effect can kick in.
So, Tara, what should we expect in terms of the next set of targets that you've set for yourself? You talked about the Noida community that's going to be up and running by 2025. What else is on the cards?
So we're actually getting into what I'm calling version 3.0 Vantara. And there's a lot of scale up that we are envisioning because it's a very exciting time for us. So when we look at our residences vertical, our second project is already well on its way to getting operationalized. We want to have at least 5 to 7 more residential communities in the coming 3 to 5 years. In the vertical of care homes, we see ourselves going from a current 100 beds to about 2,000 beds and spreading outside of the NCR. We want to continue to grow the home care business as almost an ancillary service to these. And we are actually in an exciting juncture where we're looking at other adjacent opportunities that can also help us scale up and give us sort of a fair amount and uplift in revenues now that we're being able to see the proof points of all of our business models. So we're sort of at the start of a very exciting phase 3, as we call it.
Okay, so 3.0, that's the journey that you're starting. But Saumyajit, if I were to ask you for a wish list to leave us with, we've all spoken about the opportunity that exists, but if there was a wish list in terms of the changes that you believe need to be made, both at a policy level, at the level of government intervention to enable and facilitate the growth of this space, anything in specific that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, so I think the one must definitely acknowledge the fact that the last 2 years, particularly, there's a lot of activity that has happened by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. The current secretary has been extremely active, Subramanian, for making, together a lot of policy changes. But I think the one policy shift that is very important is to be able to have organizations which are in the senior care space, benefit from the kind of services they are able to do and pass on benefits to the end consumers, particularly in matters related to GST, or how we can reduce the burden that they already have. Elders across the country, as we know, they have high assets but low cash. They don't have a running income. So adding to their expenditure is not a great idea, and therefore being able to have expenditure related benefits come to them by virtue of lower tax or GST is something which is a very important aspect. Two, I think from a policy standpoint, being able to help partnerships and able to help organizations who want to do public-private partnerships across the country, whether it's in the form of senior living or assets that Tara talked about. I think it's a very important thing because across the country there is a lot of communities and assets which are there. If such kind of assets could be shared, it could be a massive advantage. We are doing a lot of programs now in Gurgaon where we are trying to see how Gurgaon can become pretty much like an elders first destination for the country. And these will require government and private sector to work very closely together. So recognizing that elders itself is a large opportunity, they are an unutilized, a great cohort that can benefit government and private sectors. I think these are small things that can play a big role from a policy standpoint.
Well, Tara, Saumyajit and Neil, thanks so much for joining us here on this special edition of Young Turks to talk about the opportunities that exist in the geriatric care space and, more importantly, the kind of products and services that will be required to ensure that as we age, we also age with dignity and joy. Tara, Saumyajit and Neil, we wish the three of you the very best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us here on Young Turks. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up on CNBC-TV18. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute with more.